Hi, Elizabeth. We are here again.
Yes, we are. Welcome back.
Welcome back. And it looks like we'll be here for some time more. And so today we are focusing on public sector organizations and crisis management in public sector organizations. And we've got two great guests today. And one of them being my great friend, Miss Megan MacPherson. We've known each other for more than 12 years now. And Megan is currently the Deputy City Manager at the City of Roseville. And the City of Roseville is the largest city in Placer County with about 143,000 people in Northern California and having about more than 1,000 employees. And Megan is the Deputy City Manager there. And she has a degree of journalism from Northwestern University. And she's been with the city since 2007.
And we also have Dr. Robert Ulmer, Dean of the Greenspun College of Urban Affairs at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I know that you must be very popular right now because you are an internationally recognized expert in the field of communications and with a focus on crisis management.
Megan, I know you have been doing some great work recently and prior. We want to hear a little bit about the Engage Roseville campaign.
Great, yeah. With the Engage Roseville initiative, what we set out to do was to ask our community, after years of budget cuts that were not very visible to the community, ask our community, what are your priorities? Because we were getting to a point where it was going to be more visible and people were going to start noticing a decline in services. So we used a combination of online, in-person, and short involvement, long involvement, deep involvement, shallow involvement to allow everybody and anybody, whether you live in Roseville, you work in Roseville, you own a business here, to participate and tell us what matters. And so it was a very robust program. What ended up happening is the community said, okay, we see all these, here's a lot of our preferences, but I moved here because I love the quality of services here. I moved here for the parks. I moved here for the quality of the public safety. And we want to maintain our services. So the city council put that option, which was a sales tax revenue, on the ballot to let the community decide if they wanted to raise revenue and keep those services the same. So what ended up happening is after a year and a half, the community approved a sales tax measure, which had never been on the ballot before in Roseville. And they approved it with a 64% passing. We needed 50 plus 1. That's what a sales tax requires in California. And it was about 10 points higher than what had been anticipated. So there was a lot of support and buy-in.
So Rob, what is thought leadership and how would you interpret Megan's efforts as a thought leader?
Yeah, Hakan, I think one of the key parts of managing a crisis effectively is having outstanding stakeholder relationships, right? Learning from other types of crises. And then having those thought leaders being able to transform the organization and engage it in ways that allow it to be successful.
We have a powerful example of a very positive thought leader. Megan, you did this, you had great success with Engage Roseville. Can you tell us, what is Family Meal Roseville? This was an initiative that you launched post-crisis.
And you know, it's really cool to see how it happens, how it has happened organically, because you go from this basis of Engage Roseville and establishing a dialogue with the community and them knowing that they're valued. And then what ended up happening is that put us in a great spot during a crisis to have these relationships already in the community and to be able to launch a program that addressed two things in our crisis, which was economic instability and food insecurity. So what we did with Family Meal Roseville was we purchased meals from restaurants in a meal kit, and we provided those to vulnerable populations at affordable housing communities and at school sites where families were picking up meals. We had tremendous support. I think the engagement that had been building up and our approachability really as a city allowed this to happen pretty quickly.
Rob?
And so this is a great example of both thought leadership and effective crisis management in ways in which people are working together to develop solutions. And much of what we have to do in a crisis is develop solutions together. But if you don't know who your partners are, you haven't really worked with them very much in advance, it's much, much more difficult to do that during a crisis.
And the question is now how to get there, because Megan is a great example of what kind of things can be done as a thought leader. But in this chaotic environment, how can we emerge as thought leaders? So the world is chaotic right now. To emerge as a thought leader, we need some mental maps. And I think we can turn to chaos theory to understand what we can do in organizations and how can we emerge as thought leaders. So
yeah, it's the perfect time to be thinking about chaos and complexity, isn't it? It's we all feel like it's the world is unfamiliar to us. It's new and it's unpredictable. So chaos theory provides some vocabulary and some understanding to make sense of it. First of all, the idea of chaos theory is that it's not a linear world in which we live, that it has, there's some order in it, but it moves in dynamic ways that change the nature of the world in which we live. If you think about the internet, and when the internet came into existence, how that changed the world in which we live. And so chaos theory really helps us understand how bifurcation points, which are these changes in a system, and they're dynamic and difficult changes, change systems in ways that we could have never predicted. And I would say what Megan talked about earlier, just the budgeting process that they had in Roseville changed the system of the way the local government dealt with its individuals and community members. And that changed it forever. And so bifurcation points can be very positive and they can be negative, but we self-organize then around these bifurcation points. And we realize that communities and organizations, as they self-organize, they develop a new future for themselves. And I would say Roseville developed a new future after its budgeting process. And as it developed those new stakeholder relationships, it began to move in new and unique directions. We do that based upon what in chaos theory we call strange attractors. So strange attractors are the values and the norms and the consistent communication patterns and the engagement that we have with one another. So even though chaos talks about this unpredictability, there is some predictability within a system. And that predictability has to do with the communication patterns, the values, the norms that we have.
And we like this predictability. I think it's human nature. We want to have a sense of security when we think about tomorrow or the next month or the next year, which I think brings us to the concept of the cosmology episode, because you get to self-organization if you can overcome the cosmology episode. Can you explain about that also a little bit?
Yeah, I think the cosmology episode is describing the disbelief and the lack of understanding about what's going on around us. And I think you see that with COVID-19. With COVID-19, we have new information, it seems like every hour, about what the risks are and what the potential risks are. So people are experiencing a cosmology episode. It's the prior communication, it's the strange attractors, it's the self-organizing process that communities and organizations go through that help people make sense of what they're dealing with.
Megan did something that you talk about quite a bit in your work, Rob, which was that she didn't begin her messaging with her messaging. She began her messaging to the public by listening.
Listening is really utilized when people think about communication, right?
It's a forgotten part of communication.
It is forgotten. Megan, I'll let you talk about why you did that as a thought leader.
That sounds good. You know, it's interesting too, Rob, listening to you talk about chaos theory, because it provides the context for what we've just been through. And so we did a strategic plan, our council did last fall. So we reaffirmed mission, vision, values, set out what the priorities are. And with that, we were able to have this foundational set of truths for our community and for our staff to operate with. So when this crisis hit, we were ready to looking back and looking at the framework, that really set us up to have a good foundation to jump into action. And we were having daily calls with our executive team. Our city manager was in daily, hourly communication with our city council. And we were paying attention to what the community was saying on social media, all of those things.
So the center for all this is communication, and I also have seen that in Rob's work. It's not like lip service, like we mean real communication. So the centerpiece of this chaos theory, to my understanding, is, and also the engine of the whole process to move from like fractals to cosmology episode to self-organization to really see the strange attractors. They all come out only if the entity and the people who create that entity communicate amongst one another almost on an instantaneous basis, so they make sense together of a new reality.
Right. And you know what else is, when Rob was talking about going back to normal, or the new normal, which I know people are tired of hearing that term. First heard it in 2008 after the recession hit. But now I've heard Hakan talking about like rebalancing. So I think that's really a good framework to look at what we're going to be experiencing ahead, and also to hold on to the openness we have that chaos creates. As a disruptor, we're looking for a new sense of how to move forward based on some timeless principles. And I think that a rebalancing is really a good framework to understand how we can successfully move forward in the world, given a new set of circumstances.
So then chaos is not catastrophe. It's okay to
Right.
have chaos. We are in a chaotic environment, whether we like it or not. Is that right, Rob?
No, that's exactly right. It changes how you view crises, because self-organizing and cosmology and bifurcations are helping the system become stronger, better, more effective if you're communicating effectively, if you're working well together.
This uptick that you're experiencing in engagement on the part of the community, as the deputy city manager, this is an exciting time for you. You have the ear of your community in a way that you had not in the past.
We are all getting the input of the community and the engagement, and our numbers on our public comment have increased 600% during this time as people are tuning into public meetings. The numbers of people watching, the response rate that we got from a flash vote survey we did with our community about 6 weeks ago were very high percentage response rates, and people are willing to speak when they know they're being listened to.
And the fact that such practices exist is both a bright light to our community and responsibility for other leaders in other public sector organizations, because it is doable. And that brings us to this optimism, right? So instead of using crisis as an excuse to just do nothing or to move your hidden agendas, I think it's important for public sector organization leaders to step up and emerge as a thought leader in their organization and in their society.
Absolutely. I think you have then the opportunity to move from fragile environments to anti-fragile, and to create opportunities out of crisis where communities actually become more trusting, have better relationships, create new solutions, and create that readjustment or rebalancing of a future that is something that people want to look forward to.
I don't think we can get any more optimistic than this, Elizabeth. What do you think?
I think I feel very fortunate today, and I would like to thank you on behalf of both of us, Rob and Megan, for your wisdom and insights today and sharing them with us. I think that many people will be building on your work, Megan.
More mental maps, and we really appreciate your great energy at a time that's much needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.